Hey, folks, sorry for the delay. We had a very unfortunately timed fire drill in our building right before we were scheduled to start here. Um, Usually you'd expect to get a warning, but we just didn't know. You would
We
not know the time, right? See?
we knew it was today, just not what time. But honestly, 5 minutes before is better than 5 minutes into it, because we would have just been abandoning this thing entirely. Um, okay, we're gonna get started. Go ahead and get going. We may not even use the remaining 45 minutes. We'll see. We'll see how many questions everybody has. But just want to introduce myself. Today, we are going through our new State of the System Data Hub. My name is Steve Davis. I'm the Director of Transportation for America. I run transportation programs for Smart Growth America. Corrigan can introduce himself in just a minute, but Corrigan is our policy manager and has really been the driving force behind this data hub that we have spent a lot of the last year or so developing and are continuing to develop. Also want to say a huge thanks to Arnold Ventures, which supported a lot of this work. They are very data driven in their funding and their work and saw a great value and a great gap we're going to get into today with accessibility of data that tells the story of how our federal transportation money is being spent, where, why, how, and they wanted to support that work. So we're very grateful to the folks at Arnold Ventures for supporting this work. Just a quick word about Transportation for America. We are a national nonprofit working to create a transportation system that safely, affordably, accessibly connects everyone to jobs, services, and opportunities through diverse travel options. We work through advocacy. We do a lot of direct technical assistance to communities, maybe some of you who are here on the call today. And we do a lot of research and analysis, which is what we're going to be diving into today. Um, with the state of the system. So real quick, I want to give you a little background on who we are and what we care about, hopefully to tee up why this data hub exists, why we spend a lot of time working on it, why we think this is really, really important, and also how it connects to what we want to see accomplished in transportation policy at the federal level. So we have three very, very simple principles for our platform for transportation policy in this country at all levels, really, but very much focused on the federal reauthorization process. The first one is that we need to design our roads for safety over speed. Every transportation agency has safety as their top priority, and then safety loses out over and over again to other priorities along the way. You can't have a road that is designed to create value, create a meaningful place, move cars as quickly as possible through it, and make a safe place for people to walk, bike, take transit, just exist, eat at sidewalk restaurants, get from one side of the street to the other. These goals are incompatible. That's our first priority. We want to design for safety ahead of speed, and our federal program should prioritize that. Our second goal, one we've worked on for a very long time, is the need to fix it first. We need to prioritize repair with the money that we spend on transportation. If you poll voters and ask them if this already exists, most people will say that, well, that's a common sense policy, of course. We require every state DOT to take care of their bridges and roads that they have before building something new. Couldn't be farther from the truth. And as we've continued to expand and expand and expand the system over the last few decades, we have created a system that is so unwieldy and so huge, it is almost impossible to stay ahead of maintenance needs. We cannot keep expanding it while ignoring the maintenance needs that we have. There's a compelling argument that we could devote all of our money in the federal program to repair and maintenance. We still wouldn't be able to knock down the backlog. It is high time to start prioritizing repair. And our last priority is the need to invest in the rest. We cast a compelling vision I mean, even as far back as the 30s, as for a national highway program and connecting this country that was poorly connected back then. We created a vision, we figured out how to pay for it later, and we built an interstate system and highways to connect the country that have been the envy of the world. We need to do the same thing for all the other ways that people get around. We need to invest in the rest of the system. We need to invest in transit, in passenger rail, regional connections, more safe, convenient ways to walk and bike around our communities, within them, across them, connecting them together. We need to invest in the rest and complete and create a complete transportation network. If you don't know, I assume because if you're here and you're wanting to dive into data, you're already aware of this, but we are already knee deep in the process of surface transportation reauthorization. This is the process by which Congress writes the policy and funding mechanisms for all federal transportation policy and programs for usually 5 years at a time, not always. We've had some shorter ones over the last few years. It happens every 5 to 7 years. This current law expires this time next year, almost exactly a year from now. But we are already deeply underway. The House committee that is responsible for the majority of the bill in the House, they are saying they want to have their portion of it done before the end of the year and pass. These things have a long lead time, but at the same time, we have not passed a reauthorization on time. I think in my entire life. As long as I have worked on transportation policy, we have always had extensions. And actually, I don't think we have the chart in here. In the last 20 years, we have been operating under an extension of current policy almost a third of the time. It's not going to happen next September. Very unlikely. We'll see. That's our bet. I want to talk through two sort of animating beliefs behind our work that really tie into this data hub and why we created it, why we need it, and why we want all of you to use it and help us improve it. And I'm actually going to take these in a different order because I want to start with the money because that's where everybody wants to talk anyway. But talking about the outcomes really ties into this data hub. The first is, we hear a lot about the idea that the Highway Trust Fund, the mechanism that we have used to fund transportation in this country for going on 50 years now, that it's on life support or it's threatened or we're facing a fiscal cliff. We want people to understand the Highway Trust Fund has been dead as a user pays mechanism for transportation since 2008. This chart just shows the cumulative, the Highway Trust Fund balance is the red line. The green lines show the amount of general fund transfers that we have made into it. General funds, that means money from every single taxpayer in the country taken out of their pockets, whether they drive, whether they do not drive, whether they drive 47,000 miles a year or 2,000 miles a year. We have taken that money from all taxpayers to keep this thing solvent. Right now, the CBO is projecting that we will reach a zero balance in the Highway Trust Fund in 2028. By 2035, we will be $330 billion in the hole. That is a false picture of actually where we are with the trust fund. If Congress had not started these transfers back in 2008, the Highway Trust Fund would have gone bankrupt in that year, 2008. And if we had not continued to make all of these transfers, we would be $600 billion in the hole by 2035. Look, the trust fund mechanism is dead. It is not on life support. It is dead. So this gets a lot of attention in circles in DC. There is a thought that we are somehow going to keep this thing limping along somehow. And we can. There are a couple options. But really, it comes down to either cutting our spending down to the level of these revenues or continuing to put massive amounts of deficit spending into this program. I think the appetite for that has gone away. And the reason that it's gone away is the second point that I want to make here in a second. But just to put this into real terms, the gas tax 2028 is projected to bring in 44 billion. If you look at FHWA highway formula programs in the transportation bill for 2028, just taking numbers forward, that program is already $20 billion over what revenues bring in. If we took and hit this third column to the right, that's transit grants, formula grants, new starts grants, all the competitive grants, the passenger rail program. If you lopped all those things out of the federal program, the highway program alone is $20 billion over what the gas tax brings in. We are not going to solve this problem by kicking every other use out of the trust fund on its own. The starting point for every trade group working on federal transportation, whoever they are, is that we need to keep spending at the levels of the IIJA. Most people say we need to keep IIJ levels plus adjust for inflation. This is what that looks like. $270 billion in formula spending under IIJA. That's, you can see the dotted line represents, that's the money that we actually have from the gas tax. They want to basically double that amount. That's everything in red over that dotted line is deficit spending. I don't think that's feasible. And the reason I think that's not feasible is because people are growing tired of the promises of this program versus the outcomes that this program has delivered. And I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle are starting to say, maybe this is not a program worth deficit spending for. Maybe this is not a program where we should pour more money into it because what we are getting from it is diminishing returns on these investments. So we have a program that is failing to deliver on repair. The country's engineers will tell you this. We have spent $1.5 trillion on transportation over the last 20 or so years. That has gotten our roads from a D to a D plus. That's a pretty poor investment. ASC will also tell you that we cannot build our way out of congestion, but that will not stop them from trying. We have a program that's failing to deliver on safety. Here's our safety numbers compared to the rest of the developed world. We are at the back of the pack. It's not particularly close. We have a program that's failing to deliver the promises on congestion. Congestion reduction is the goal that so often takes precedence over safety, even when we say safety is the top priority, what we really spend our money on. If you look at where the money goes, it goes towards alleviating, reducing, mitigating, whatever it is, congestion. That has been the number one aspect that defines our transportation program for 20 years, and it's failed miserably. We have tried to expand highways faster than population, twice as fast as population, whatever it is. Nothing has brought us returns. We have only gotten more congestion. We have a program that's failing to deliver on safety outcomes. This goes back to 1994. The top line is total fatalities. You can see we've been up and down, and you can see, from 21 to 22, we had a lot of people celebrating this great decrease. We're still significantly higher than we were 10, 15, 20 years ago. This has been up and down. But if you look at the bottom line, safety for people that are not inside of a vehicle has just gotten steadily worse. We should not be celebrating minor decreases in that next year. So, one thing I will say about all this data that we have, also emissions, transport's one of the only sectors that is actually growing here, is that this data, we just have a really poor sense as to where our money is going, how it's being spent, and what it's accomplishing at any given time. Data on traffic fatalities and injuries, for example, is always 18 months behind. When IIJA wraps up next year, we'll by then have a pretty good sense where the money from the FAST Act was spent. So we'll be deciding on the next reauthorization with really no idea, no concrete, complete idea what the $270 billion in formula spending from the IIJA got us. States are also required to set performance measures. It is a box checking exercise. This was the change that was made in MAP 21 back in 2012. In exchange for a little more flexibility, we created this new system where states have to set targets and then try to meet them. They can set terrible targets. They can set wildly ambitious targets and not get there. They can set targets to get worse. Corrigan's going to explain some of this, but if you sum up, states have to set targets for all non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries combined together. If you sum up those targets from all of the states, you get this purple line here. The red line is reality. So we're setting targets, picking projects that don't get us, that don't improve safety, and then watching safety get worse and wondering why that's happening. Because we have a program that lacks accountability, it lacks transparency. Just as one example, 10 states set targets for more people outside of vehicles to be killed. So they're taking their whatever it is, $2 billion, $5 billion from the federal government and saying, thank you. Our goal is for safety to get worse next year. These targets are one of the things you can see in our data hub, which is what we're getting to. We wanted to build this because we believe that this federal program should be accountable for these promises that it makes. And when the IIJA passed and everybody in Congress and the Biden administration at USDOT said, this is great, this is going to move the needle on congestion, on safety, on all of these outcomes. Everything that we've done to look at, to analyze the spending in the IIJA, including some of the great work that Corrigan has done through our Fueling the Crisis report, which we can drop in the chat in a little bit, has shown that this money has not accomplished what we have said that it would. And that's why we want this data hub to exist, to start to contrast the promises for the spending with the outcomes that we actually get. So this is the state of the system. You can find it at tforamerica.org/data-hub. The address is up there at the top. We'll probably put it in the chat an annoying number of times. This first iteration of the data hub, the goal is to continue to add to and improve and iterate on this, but we added data that matches up with our three priorities. So we would be able to see how are we performing nationally and then in each state on repair, on fixing it first, on safety, and then on investment. Where's our money going? What sort of modes is it going to? So with that, I'm going to kick it to Corrigan, who is our policy manager and has worked really, really hard on this project to walk you all through what you can do with the Data Hub.
Cool. Thanks, Steve.
All right, you want me to stop sharing?
I think so.
Okay.
Should send your request. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen right quick. Yeah, so what we're going to do right now is actually a quick walkthrough of the tools that we have in the Data Hub, its features, what kind of data we're talking about here. Because like Steve said, there's a lot of data around transportation, but unfortunately, the way the federal government presents it, the way it's collected across different silos from either the census, the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, National Transit Database, all of these different sources. Oh, and also the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. You lose track of it if it's not in one place. And it's really easy to lose sense of the bigger picture. And that's exactly what we're trying to really account for in this page. So we're going to go through what it looks like to jump to that first URL that Steve talked about. So it's t4america.org/data-hub. And that'll take you right here to the landing page. Like Steve said, we broke things out into three topics to start. We're going to be adding stuff to this over time as well, but we have repair, safety, and investment in the rest. And investment is a comprehensive look at what is being spent across the system, across all modes. But this landing page, one, you can drop in immediately to each of these different topics. Or if you're looking to just go straight into a state, what you can do is just through either this drop down, scroll for your state, or select it on the map for a specific state data and their own individual state page. Further down, we also have some additional facts about the different components of our actual safety and investment and repair data, just compiled from the highlights. But what we're going to do to start is just jump into repair. And I opened that tab already. So here we are in repair. So what we compiled here is a lot about the targets and road condition of our national highway system, including the interstates and non-interstate roads. So first things first, you may have a question. So why are we only focusing on that? And unfortunately, that's just a limitation of what's really available to us as both advocates and just really policymakers even in this country. There's a dearth of information around the condition of locally owned roads, county-owned roads. Any road that's not on the national highway system is actually very difficult to get an understanding of the condition of those roads. So this isn't a complete picture. This is a picture of about 5 to 10% of our nation's roads that we fund with our federal dollars. But those do drive a lot of the traffic. pun unintended, in the United States. So right here we have a map of the condition of the roadways, the relative condition. This is compiled by Eric Dennis at the Citizens Research Council of Michigan. He helped us out with this and did some great data, really comparing each individual state and ranking them. So we have this rank mapped out, comparing the federal data on their infrastructure condition. And you can see for each state on this drop down for each one, the rank for each state for its condition on those national highway system roads. And you would also get to see quick highlights around their bridge conditions, the number of bridge or the percentage of bridges in poor condition, and the percentage of interstate pavement miles in good condition, for instance. So it's a good way to get a picture of where the states are all at relative to one another if you're trying to make a comparison between any, especially between neighbors. Sometimes they can be pretty dramatic. If you look at things like Michigan versus Ohio, when they're relatively similar climates, even there's some big differences in the condition there. But scrolling through this repair, we've got some additional metrics here, compiling national data on our spending on expansion versus repair. So this is in billions over here. This is our spending on repair versus expansion of roadways. And this has actually been a big improvement from the data that was compiled by T for America in 2019 in our repair priorities reports. And we're hoping to kind of use this platform as a way to continue that research around the spending on expansion and repair, because it used to be that states were spending about 50% on expansion, 50% on maintenance in our last report. But as you can kind of see here, states have started to do a little bit better. But to meet the actual infrastructure conditions, as Steve said, it's going to take a lot more than just barely spending more on maintenance. As you can see, scrolling through, we also have some compiled data on national highway bridge conditions. Over the last 5 years, since 2018, or longer than 5 years now, you've actually seen a mild decline in the percentage of bridges that are in good condition, and around similarly a little bit of a decline in the percentage of bridges in poor condition across the country. So this is a compilation of all bridges, though, so you can get more specific data on each of the hubs for each state. And similarly, you can see here around the national highway system, a decline in from 2018 to 2019 in the percentage of roads in good condition, a bit of an increase in the percentage of roads in poor condition. A lot of this, again, because of the delay in federal data and what we have access to, we're not really sure of what the full impact of the infrastructure law has been on condition. And a lot of judgment calls that are going to be made around this next bill are going to be made with incomplete data, because really all we have in terms of federal data on repair is info through 2022 still. And even that includes what the American Society of Civil Engineers put out for that improvement in the grade from D to D plus. We were still relying on what was essentially year one infrastructure law data at best. But we also have an additional feature here where you're able to compare different roads or different states with each other. And right now we have it configured for Rhode Island and the national US standard. So Rhode Island actually can struggle a bit with its infrastructure conditions relative to the national baseline. As you can see here, in 2017 to 2019 and 2020, you saw some declines in roadway condition. Some declines in roadway condition nationally. And that was even worse among Rhode Island, where there's significantly more roads in poor condition on those national highway system roads. And then additionally, if you take a look at this, and I'm hoping that you all can see this well, because it's a little small on maybe my screen if it's shared. So I'm going to see if I can make this a bit larger for folks. You can see that we actually have toggles for both bridge and road conditions. So if you want to just only look at the bridges, you can click these lines. And this goes for really all charts in the data hub. And we'll show some further examples once we get to the state specifics. Yeah, you can click through each of these lines to toggle them off. And then also hover over any point to get more specific data. And this right here is the percentage of bridges in poor condition for Rhode Island and nationally. You can switch these out by clearing the filters up here and selecting different states. So let's say Georgia. Let's do Georgia, and let's toggle off the national average. And so comparing Rhode Island and Georgia on their infrastructure condition across these years. So as you can see here, Rhode Island is doing a lot worse when it comes to their national highway system roads in poor condition versus Georgia here. Obviously, Rhode Island has a little bit of an older series of roads compared to a lot of the roads in Georgia. And that kind of reflects in things like their national highway roads in poor condition. There's just significantly more in terms of the total percentage. And the same goes here for bridges. But yeah, very easy to compare. We're going to get into what it looks like to export the data on these different tables once we go over to a state-specific hub. And before we do that, we're also going to take a look at the other hubs. The safety data hub, very similar. We actually have a map here of which states are doing better or worse around the average pedestrian deaths per 100,000 people over the last between the 2018 to 2022 period for when we had data to when we initially built out the data hub. There's been a little bit of an update, so there's some 2023 data we could put in this. We're planning to do that soon in a larger update. But as you can see here, there's kind of the pretty clear trend in these kind of more car dependent states around the Sun Belt, where there's some larger trends of fatalities per person here. And then also we have some statistics on how many people in total had died on the road between 2018 and 22, and as well as the share of those that were pedestrians and where those deaths occurred for pedestrians. And in much of the case, the vast majority of them were occurring on state-owned DOT roads. And again, on this safety data hub, you click on any one of these states and it'll pull you into a state-specific hub. But we're going to go through the national safety data really quickly. This was displayed in Steve's presentation a little bit earlier, but this is a national trend to put into perspective where we are over the last 30 years between 1994 and 2022. And here is a bit of a chart similarly around where people outside of a car, the number of people that have been injured or killed on the road, and comparing that against the targets over the last few years. So as you can see, the target as a sum of all states' goals for serious injuries and fatalities is usually being vastly exceeded by the actual number of fatalities on the road itself. Okay, and that was our safety hub. We're going to move over real quick to the investment hub, and then we're going to go into the states. But right here, we have a map on our spending on transit per capita in each state. And this is compiled from National Transit Database data from 2018 to 2023. New York, of course, taking the lead on this investment in multimodal transportation systems, with the least amount spent on road expansion for all transit expenditures, only a penny on road expansion for every dollar spent on transit. The rest of the country, it's really not that similar. You might notice that the colors are pretty similar on this page for a reason. The average transit spending per capita annually in Texas is something like $71.65 in between those years. And they were spending 180% on road expansion alone compared to all expenditures on transit. And that includes everything from all sources. So that's federal, state, and local for that data. You also have some data in this map about the average spending on bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And that's compiled from federal highway data around Transportation Alternatives Program. And again, you click on any one of these states and that'll bring you into the hub. And this is a compilation of different spending totals across road expansion, total highway capital expenditures, transit expenditures compiled by the National Transit Database, as well as what we're spending on bike and pedestrian infrastructure using federal dollars, and then also some info on how much that is as a percentage of total federal apportionment. So let's say in California, we want to know this data, so we can just type in California in the search, or alternatively, we can drop it in here for each of these tables there. or search bars. And as you can see, in California, they've spent on average annually around $100 million, 97 million per year on bike and pedestrian infrastructure. That sounds great, but when you consider that as percentage of their total Federal Highway Administration apportionments between those years and those fiscal years, that's still less than 3%. So it's a great way to really hold states accountable for how they're using their funding as a whole. Surprisingly, Florida, for instance, uses a lot more of their federal dollars towards active transportation than California does. So something to think about. Additionally, here we've got a track on the why we really need these multimodal investments. This is a quick table around the vehicle miles traveled and the total estimated lane mileage of the national system. So this is how much people are driving in a year and how much road there is to drive. If you kind of notice here, there's a little bit of a trend. So that's one thing we always want to point out is that VMT and estimated lane mileage track pretty well together. And one way to reduce the total number of driving that people have to do is providing these options. And then here we've got a quick national comparison on the total expenditures on highways and transit and how they stack up nationally. Still less than half in this country of our funding on transportation goes to transit. And then this here is a little bit about some IIJA spending compiled from the Bureau of Transportation Stats. So with that, we're going to jump into a state hub. I don't know if anybody in the chat has any specific states they want to jump into. Feel free to chime in if you're interested in anything. Otherwise, I'm going to just jump in. Tennessee, let's do it.
Michelle wins the sweepstakes.
Michelle, thank you for typing so fast.
First on the chat.
All right, so Tennessee. And for all those that want to check out Colorado and Wisconsin, again, you can just hop into the Data Hub and check that out yourself as well if you want to follow along. But yeah, we have all of our data broken out into our 3 areas of focus right now across repair, safety, and investment with some quick notes to start summarizing some of the key points across these areas. So for instance, in Tennessee here, we have a relatively good ranking on the condition of roads. So they put a premium on spending relative to other states slightly. But of that data, we're only talking about 21% of all of the roads in that state. So 79% of the roads that are for the public are not listed in this data and are kind of a mystery to us. And if you consider how much of the federal transportation funding goes to those state roads, less than 10%, so 0 to 5% of that funding in 2023 at least went to localities to repair those locally owned roads. So there might be a reason why the state-owned roads are doing so well relative to the localities. But again, we don't have data, and that's something that we're hoping to get better in the future. Also, some quick notes on safety, as well as some transit investment and multimodal investment. Cool, and then jumping in, our repair and maintenance data is built out around the National Highway Performance Management System. And a lot of that includes tracking targets and compiling them. Federal data has been pretty, let's just say a little opaque around what previous year's targets look like compared to today's performance. And what we tried to do with this is for each state, kind of put that in focus. Where are we relative to our targets and where are our targets relative to our real performance? And states on their interstates, for the most part, tend to exceed their targets, but it's really pretty easy when you're setting targets that are below your existing and previous performance. So if you look here, this is a chart of the interstate performance for Tennessee. In 2021, they set a target to have 60% of their roads in good condition, when all the way back in 2018, they were at 72% of their roads in good condition. So they're already not striving to improve. And what does that result in? You're already seeing a decline in 2022, possibly thanks to having these regressive targets for improvement. Similarly, you can kind of see it's a little bit harder to see here with all these different things. So this is another thing you can do on the Data Hub. You can toggle things off and go through. and see if there's any specific measures. So if you want to only look at the poor condition, you can do that. Moving on, we've got everything. It's not just interstate data. We have non-interstate data and their targets. States tend to perform worse on the interstates, and that's just something we can bring out, and you can take a look there. And then we also have data on their national highway bridges for each state. And then not just national highway bridges. Thankfully, there's data on all bridges in the state. And similarly to some of the other national data, there's been a bit of a decline in the condition of all bridges here in this state. And that's a quick look at this repair data. We're going to go through to safety too and take a look at where the state is relative to their targets on safety. And much like the rest of the country, there's been crisis here in Tennessee with rising fatalities and each year annually rising targets. In the states in the future now, they're aiming in the relative future when they set these targets. In 2024, they set a target for 1,346 people to die on their roads. When they set that target, there was 1,314. So they had set targets in 2023 and 2024 for more people to die on the roads than they did in 2022. And similarly, we've got that for for serious injuries. Serious injuries have been declining, and the targets have been declining. Well, that's great, but still an issue with fatalities. And for other non-motorized fatalities, so this is for folks that are outside of a vehicle. Okay, and then we have our multimodal investment data. And this is a breakdown of the funding for transit agencies in the state. So this is a picture really on how much the state is contributing, how much per capita, and how much is that relative to federal funding. So here in Tennessee, you can see that it's pre-COVID, a little bit more from the state and local side. And that also includes fare box revenue, by the way. And then, of course, post-COVID, there was the spike for transit operating funds. And then it kind of returned here towards 2023 back to being more state-led. But when you take those numbers in context on the average annual investment in transit versus the average annual investment in highways, very much so in the state that highway spending exceeds transit spending, really dwarfing it here. And again, this is available for each state, and some of them look very different from this. We also have data on how states are flexing their federal funding. So for some context, federal funding for the highway program is transferable between road programs like the National Highway Performance Program, the Surface Transportation Block Grant, and we've got some more data on this in the portal. But right now, under current law, up to 50% of funding can go between each program, and up to 100% of any program can be transferred to transit. But most states are not really using that flexibility, and we have some data here on how this state is transferring their funding. And this is all thanks really to the Climate and Community Institute, who helped compile this data, and they have an excellent tool as well to take a look at this. But really, what you see as a trend in this state is you have PROTECT, which is the IIJA's climate resiliency program, being transferred to things like the Surface Transportation Block Grant, which is very flexible and not really connected to any accountability measures. Similarly, take a look at the carbon reduction program, also transferred to the Surface Transportation Block Grant. So interesting to see that when states give the opportunity to use flexible funding, they tend to put it towards the least accountable funding pot. And this reauthorization, that's pretty significant, as there's bipartisan legislation to increase flexibility without increasing accountability. So that's a large issue that we'd like to flag in our advocacy as well. Then we also have some data on how much is being spent on bike and pedestrian projects over the years, and how much that is as a share of all of their federal apportionments. So in Tennessee here in 2019, it peaked at about 4.78% of their federal apportionments going to bike, ped, and trail projects. And in 2023, those numbers have kind of fallen off, even despite the increased investment thanks to the IIJA. And then here we have a graph or a table here on the categories of spending in the state. So you've got how much is being spent on expansion, how much is being spent on maintenance, bridges, bridge expansion, and then also any other spending. Sometimes the other, unfortunately, doesn't always capture bike and pedestrian spending, though. And then we have a graph for that too. Okay, and then some of the cool features about our data hub is that we have the ability to take data down and export it for use in your own advocacy. So we started working on an example, and if you requested Minnesota, we've got some options to show you. So when we're taking a look at our data hub, there's a lot of resources that you can pull from, and we're going to start just giving an example of how to pull from um, the repair portfolio. And so we're going to look at Minnesota here in a second. Great. So to start, what is going on in Minnesota? How are the transportation investments affecting repair? And what we want to take a look at is how much is being spent on maintenance versus expansion to start. So we have that data, and as you can see, it's kind of similar to the national levels. You're getting more now on maintenance than expansion, but there's still years worth of investment to catch back up on in terms of the repair backlog in this state, like many others. And it's say you want to take a look at this data and compile it for an average. If you want to do something with this data that we have that's not done, it's not displayed for you here already. So if you want to take a look and export the data for your own use to graph it out in whatever way works best for you, you can do a couple things with it. You can download the data into any spreadsheet forms like the CSV file or an XLS file, or you could just view the table right here and get the specific numbers. And this is really a function for every chart that we have in the data hub. So if you want to look at what the spending looks like in each instance of each chart. So here's an example of what that looks like for repair condition. You can get the data table that's displayed for each of these if it's not shown above already, and it's very easy to export. But say you want to use this to graph out what's the total spending on expansion versus maintenance. You can use that to build out graphs like this to throw in a one pager perhaps on infrastructure condition and state. Similarly, we can do that with the repair data, as I showed a little bit ago, on the interstate condition. And this is useful if you want to download it and export it. You can export it as a chart, as a printable chart. And also this can be saved as a PDF as well, if you're interested in that. Oops. Great. Right now, we are working through this, but usually we have the functionality to export this as an image just by a download. For one reason or another, we're still working this out. Recently, the export as PNG broke, but we're still working on that. In the meantime, you can still take a screenshot of this data or use the print chart function to get that displayed on your own resources if you're trying to export for your state. Cool. And again, we have the ability to parse through different data, such as national or non-interstate. And if you want to print out that data for any specific subset, if you want to focus on just the pavement in poor condition, you can sort that down and print that as well. If there's anything specific that you want, say on safety, it's the same. You can just use the different features around the tools for each charting method to get the exact specific way you want your data to be displayed. Cool. And then finally, we're able to take a look at some of the data from the top here, just kind of highlighting what we're talking about at the top of this state at a glance. We've got information here about the percentage of roads that are really analyzed, as well as things like the average number of dollars spent per capita on transit. on multimodal investment as well. So I'm going to open us up for questions on the Data Hub. I know this is kind of a definition of an info dump, and we are at 1 p.m. for this webinar, but want to give us some time for Q&A. And feel free to drop that in the chat or the Q&A function as well.
If this didn't come through there at the end too with what, I'll hold off till we close up. Matt, success stories, states that are doing well, particularly with safety, and why?
It's a good question. I think that kind of question, I think we do a little bit of an answer in our Dangerous by Design report, but taking a look at our safety hub, you can kind of, whoop, that's not it. There we go. Yeah, taking a look at our safety data hub, you can kind of parse your way through this image, for instance, on what state's doing the best based on their charting here.
Yeah, and I think our hope really is that people will dive into the data and use this in their states and
Yeah.
try to tell that story. Is your state doing well? Is your state doing badly in your advocacy? Um, the question on adding a local data, I don't know if we're going to get down to the individual jurisdiction level. We'll definitely have, I think, some data that could potentially be sliced that way, but it'll mostly, I think, come down to the state level. We may have some stuff down the road that comes in at the urban area or MSA,
Yeah.
but not down to very individual jurisdictions.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get a national perspective, one that can be kind of fair for each state. Some states are a lot better in what localities report versus others. So we'd like to kind of keep it consistent. That's really why we stuck to the federal data so that you can make these apples to apples comparisons across states.
Tom has asked a question about investments relating to safety outcomes, which is a great segue to a post we have going up on our blog, I think today, about how disconnected that is. You know, states and MPOs are required to put together essentially usually 4-year plans that has all their funded projects in it that everybody can see. The descriptions are often terrible. You know, they'll take projects that are projects to add a lane, you know, to reduce congestion and characterize it as a safety project because free flow traffic is less prone to fender benders, you know, or whatever. But the truth is that the programming process is completely unhinged from the performance measures process. And then they don't report on how this selection of projects is advancing safety, is not advancing safety. There's no feedback loop there.
Yeah.
Um, as well as the fact that these reports are just really, really hard to find and they're really hard to understand. These are the TIPs or the STIPs, state transportation improvement programs. So anyway, I don't think it's up now, but check our blog today. We have a post going up about that, which is one of our key priorities in our platform when it comes to safety. We have to report on safety in different ways and report on how our projects are moving the needle or not moving the needle. Because if they're not, we need different projects. We need more accountability. You need less funding. You need to have funding that's restricted to safety projects, those sorts of things. So keep an eye peeled for that.
Yeah, that's right. And then even in our data hub, what you can actually take a look at is this safety, engineering, and environment spending. The thing is, though, this is a big flaw really in how we report on spending on safety. A lot of people will say that, oh, we spend X amount on safety and then point to the apportionment of the Highway Safety Improvement Program. But states tend to transfer that money in and out of that program. So it's kind of hard to tell based on just how much they're receiving from the federal government, because that's not necessarily the truth. And then when you take a look at this data, which is what the state says it is spending on safety, that is actually lumped in terms of its reporting with spending on environmental mitigation and engineering work sometimes. So it's very difficult to see the raw investment in safety data. So as we're expanding this hub, we're hoping to kind of take a really granular look at projects, at least on the federal side, um, what they are actually doing specifically, kind of in line with how we analyze projects in the Fueling the Crisis report. But again, that's for a expansion to maybe Data Hub 2.5, and we're probably on 1.1.0 right now, but it's definitely on the horizon to get that more granular look at the projects that kind of meets the mark of what Steve is saying.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap up. I know we started a little late, so we had extra five minutes here. Thanks everybody for being here today. We are planning to make some updates to the Data Hub, to the state of our system, over the next month. Hopefully, we're going to schedule another webinar to walk through what we've added. So if you're on our list, which you should be from signing up for the Zoom, then look for that. We don't have it actually scheduled right now. We want to make sure that we get the data in place. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back to walk through that. If you have any questions on this at any time, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to hear, especially examples of how you're finding useful things in here and using it for your advocacy. So thanks everybody for being here today, and thank you, Corrigan, for walking us through the ins and outs.
Yeah, thanks all, and look forward to the next update. Sneak peek, it's going to be probably transit and congestion data. All right. Thanks,
All
y'all.
right. Take care, everyone.